Are you ready? Did you light the candle? Okay, let's start the ritual. Welcome to Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I'm your host, Rachel. This is a space where truth gets its voice back because shame loses its power when we speak to it. Here, we don't skip the hard parts. We sit with them, and we learn to hold ourselves inside them. This podcast is ritual in audio form, a way for us to bring intention and intuition back into our everyday. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rachel. So happy to be here.
So happy to have you here. Oh, welcome back, I should say, because Hollis has been on one other time. It was not in person, it was virtual.
Yeah.
It was kind of before we were real friends.
Yeah, it was early on in the relationship.
It was. And now we're real friends. And we also have collaborated on an event together and we'll be doing so in the future. So I'm just so stoked to have you on. Hollis is one of my favorite astrologers of all time. And what I love so much about how you talk about astrology, especially on your podcast, is just how grounded it is and how you explain it in a way that, you know, I'm being the Virgo I love the structure and the feeling that it's like tangible and something I can really touch. And when you speak your words, I'm like, oh, I can really hold on to that. Like I can really work with that in my life. So, yeah. We're having a very special episode today and we're going to talk about the astrology for 2026. So I hope we're going to go through each month and kind of give an overview and break down themes and energies and some ways that you can support yourself through this year. And I'm really hoping that this can be a little bit of a survival toolkit for all of us going into the year feeling prepared and at least a little bit more grounded and supported and with a sense of ease.
Yeah, I sincerely hope that that's what this ends up being because 2026 is such a turning point of a year. It's really an era-defining moment. If it felt like 2025 was an era-defining year, 2026 is going to be even more so. So to have some sort of anchoring or grounding or a sense of this is all unfolding as it should be, some sort of trust in the process and the experiences as they're happening, I think will be really helpful for people. So
yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting for me, I feel like this 2025 was kind of the preparation.
yes.
I feel like it was the breakdown of a lot of things and laying the stage and kind of setting the scene. For me, it felt very much like an in-between year, and in tarot, it was the Hermit, which we won't go into all of that, but it really just felt like something's about to come, and this year got us ready for it, and now 2026, it's happening, it's here.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of astrologers talked about 2025 as like the pilot episode, and then 2026 we're like fully in the whole rest of the season.
I feel
so yeah, we definitely got a taste of what 2026 and the subsequent years after are going to feel like in 2025, but it's going to be like inescapable after we really get into 2026.
All right, should we get into it?
Yeah. Okay. So I will say that at the start of the year, we have a lot of planets and signs where they were for the last decade or so. So it's going to feel like we're in familiar territory for like the first couple weeks of January. There's also a lot of planets that are going to be in Capricorn, like a lot of planets. We have Venus, the Sun, Mars, Mercury, all in Capricorn. And so it's going to feel really grounding, and it's going to feel like we want to look towards the future. You know, I don't ever think that having New Year's resolutions around the start of the year is an accident, like having that align with Capricorn energy. It's perfect. It's like, what are we building? What are we creating? What are our goals? What are the ambitions? And I think that's going to be very palpable for people at the very start of the year. But pretty soon after that, we have our first major movement, which is Neptune moving into Aries on January 26th. And this is a major tone shift because Neptune only changes signs approximately every 12 years. And that's part of the reason why 2026 is such a big deal. It's because we have all of the outer planets, except for Pluto, changing signs. So it feels like collectively, a lot of things that have been stable in the background are now shifting and taking on a new energy. And so when Neptune enters Aries, I've heard people describe this as we all start to dream a new dream, because Neptune is dreams, illusions, vision, and it's also our healing capacity and our capacity to tap into spirituality, things that are a little more ephemeral. So when it shifts from Pisces to Aries, it shifts from being in this like very empathetic, compassionate, watery energy to very not ego-driven, fiery energy necessarily, but it's very leadership-oriented. It's very initiatory kind of energy. And so collectively, we're shifting out of like this deeply feeling vision and dream to a more active, fiery, sometimes competitive, sometimes very egotistical or head-centered kind of dream.
Feels like it could go one of two ways. Like, I think it could either be really invigorating and like, let's get this done energy and like making our dreams happen, or it can be like argumentative and very egotistical and fiery and just like things going up in flames.
Yeah.
So
I was watching what like the collective energy was like when Neptune first moved into Aries in March of 2025, because it was there from March to October of 2025. And there was this resurgence or not a resurgence, but there was like this collective push towards being really creative. Suddenly a lot of people were coming out and saying, now I'm a musician, now I'm this type of artist. Like they were tapping into a level of creativity that perhaps they've wanted to access for a long time, but haven't really felt the motivation or the ability to. And so I do think that that's going to be a really beautiful signature of this transit, which will last for another 12 years. Like once it moves in officially in 2026, it's there until like 2038 or something like that.
So to clarify, it had a short stint.
It had a short
stint. In 2025.
Yes.
And went back into Pisces and now is going fully into Aries.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are going to feel like they just have a lot of generative energy and a lot of creativity that they want to express. And I think that there's going to be a lot of healing that comes from creativity, particularly, that we'll all see collectively. But at the same time, there is a kind of idealizing Aries warrior type energy. And that can be the negative side of creating an illusion or a disillusion around like what the fight actually is, and also what we're fighting for and why we're fighting in the first place, and also what the fight will look like. Like the last time Neptune was in Aries was at the end of the Civil War, I believe. And there was just this collective feeling that it was going to be this, really quick fight. Like it wasn't going to be this big, enormous, devastating experience for the country and for the Union. And that's what it ended up being. So there can be with Neptune, there can be this kind of fog or like a mist around the reality of something. And so we have to be clear about what it is that we're looking at, and to also access things from a bunch of different perspectives if we have the feeling that we're not seeing the whole picture.
What's coming up for me around that is just how important it's going to be so clear on your intentions and your desires and your like what you want for your life and what you're passionate about, and to stay hyper fixated on that and not get caught up in what everyone else is passionate about and everyone else is doing, and just like on social media how things can like people can very easily stir the pot and like set fires, and to just really be like, no, this is my lane and I'm going to stay clear on pouring my energy into these things. Yeah.
And I think a big part of the conversation of 2026 as a whole, and we'll talk about this as we go through month by month, but a big conversation is, what is leadership? And I think that we all have to really question, what is leadership when it's coming from us, and what kind of leadership are we advocating for, supporting, voting for, etc. And what you just said about staying in your lane, I think defining the kind of leader that you want to embody, even if that means you're just thinking about what kind of parent do I want to be? What kind of business owner do I want to be? What kind of client do I want to be? Like whatever, however you're demonstrating your leadership, defining that for yourself and then sticking to it and like noticing when you're being pulled away from that centrality is going to be a big part of like what we're all making sense of.
Yeah, and owning that we all are leaders in our own life. Like we are the leaders of our life, and we have to claim that and see how powerful that can be and use that power wisely.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And to also hold people in power accountable to that, to holding their power or using their power wisely,
Yes.
I think is going to be a major conversation. I mean, it already is, but it's going to be even more so in 2026 for sure.
Absolutely.
So moving on, what I'm actually really, really excited about come February is that I'm seeing the theme for February as expanded consciousness of what's possible. And so Saturn moves into Aries to join Neptune. And on the 20th, they form an exact conjunction where they come together in the sky at 0 degrees of Aries. And this only happens every 30 or so years. The last time it happened was in 1989. The Berlin Wall came down, which is like the perfect example of what these two energies can do together. Neptune dissolves things, Saturn is structure. And so together it can look like structures being dissolved, systems being dissolved, things being torn down that have we thought were going to withstand the test of time. But it can also look like taking your dreams, your visions, your idealizations, is that a word? Your ideals.
Yeah.
And putting structure and form to them and like making them manifest. It's a word now. Yeah. So there's this really interesting interplay of a lot of things dissolving and a lot of space being made, and for the possibility of new ideas and new dreams and new visions to be created and take up that space that is now being made. And that happens in February alongside our first Aquarius eclipse. And Aquarius is also the water bearer, the wisdom bearer. When we have this eclipse and it's co-present with Pluto, it just feels like we have this expansive understanding of what is possible for the collective and what is possible for our future together as a society, as a culture, and how we're understanding again what old things need to dissolve and what old things need to be even perhaps destroyed, and where we need to create new forms of collective leadership. And again, these themes, as I'm talking about them, I feel like they're kind of familiar to us. Like we've been exploring these already in different capacities. It's just going to be a ramping up of them is what I'm seeing, is like, especially come February, it's going to feel like all of these themes that we've been exploring, like especially in the United States, there's all these different systems that we've relied on for a long time. Like as we're talking right now, SNAP is being withheld, and like the East Wing of the White House is being torn down. Like all of these things that we used to just count on are now being threatened. And it's just going to look like an intensification of that as we get closer and closer to February. But in the wake of that, there's also going to be this collective coming together of, well, if these old systems aren't here to support us, how are we supporting each other? How are we stepping up for one another? And how are we actually coming together to make that change possible? Mm-hmm. So February, I think, is just going to feel like, again, like our minds are being stretched, like boundaries within our consciousness have dissolved a little bit to make room for new ways of coming together and operating together and making change together.
Yeah, for me, it really does come back to this Aries leadership, deciding what kind of leader we want to be in our life and then taking action in that way. Mm-hmm. It's also the start of my Saturn return, so definitely marked that
very
moment
poignant for you.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, in my head, but Yeah, I think it has the potential to be really powerful in a positive way if we can all stay focused and grounded.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think tapping into grounding practices, tapping into grounding rituals. I just had an exchange with another astrologer that talked about how Saturn and Neptune together can be a very ritualistic arrangement because, again, Neptune is spirit and Saturn is structure, and being able to put the two together essentially creates ritual. And so I think being able to connect to the grounding rituals to balance out the intense fire energy that we're experiencing around this time of year will feel really good. I will say the other thing that I'm very excited about with regards to this moment and why I'm feeling like it's going to be there's going to be lots of possibility for it to be deeply healing is that Jupiter is still in Cancer, which I'll explain in a minute, but it's still in Cancer. It's been retrograde and it's stationing on its exaltation degree, and it's hovering at that spot for, I think, about 3 weeks, which is really, really beautiful. Essentially, that means, Jupiter does its best work in Cancer, and that means it expands nourishment, it expands sensitivity, it expands our desire to care for one another and to create like systems of mutual aid and systems of really deeply caring justice and tapping into our emotional wisdom. And so that's also in the background of while this conjunction is happening and while this intensification of like dissolving old forms and creating new forms, it's all happening all at the same time. So I feel like there's also this very palpable feeling of all of this is changing, all of these conversations are happening, and this is also how we're going to care for each other in the process. And the fact that it's on its exaltation degree, it's not just in Cancer where it's exalted, it's on its exaltation degree, just speaks to the power that will also bring to the background of this whole experience. So I am very, very hopeful that even if there's a lot of things that feel like they're on fire, there's a lot of also cooling mechanisms in terms of how we're connecting with one another, nourishing one another, making change for one another, supporting one another, and advocating for one another at the same time.
I feel like the answer to February, and honestly maybe to this whole year, is ritual and community. Like really knowing your practices that support you, knowing your people that support you, and leaning into them and finding them if you don't have them.
And also tapping into intuition, and that Mercury is retrograding only through water signs through this entire year. And so there's this pulling us into our intuition, pulling us into our bodies, pulling us into our felt sense.
Love that.
In the midst of all the fire and the air and the activity and the change. And so also having moments where we consciously, very intentionally slow down to check in with our body and check in with our emotional experience and check in with our felt sense and really nourish ourselves, like nourish these vessels that we're in so that we don't get burnt out, because there's a very high potentiality for burnout based off of the energies of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really love that. And I think that for me, I often think of the new year come Aries season and come the spring equinox in March. And so often January and February, I'm still in winter mode and like grounding and preparing. But I feel like it's such a prime time for us to tap into our intuition around how we want to show up for the rest of the year, around our intentions, around what kind of leader we want to be, what actions we want to take, and to use this energy, both the dream-like energy and the action-oriented energy, as preparation for the embodiment of it the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it, because it does feel like especially come March, once Saturn and Neptune are officially in Aries, and Jupiter has stationed direct. We have, at the end of February, this Mercury retrograde. Mercury stations direct also in March, literally just before the spring equinox. It does feel like, okay, there's a lot of rearranging going on at the start of the year in these last few months of winter, and we're getting used to these new energies. And a big part of these new energies, again, when we're talking about Aries, is we're talking about our identity. For everybody, it's going to feel like something is clicking in terms of what's been shifting in your identity over the last year or so. I've spoken to so many people, so many clients, where they just feel like they're on the precipice of a new identity shift. And I feel like it's really going to land come February, early March, where it's like, okay, now I'm really embodying it. And so then we can look at March, especially around the spring equinox, as like, okay, now I've shifted, and now I can really look ahead from this embodiment stance of where I want to be going next for the rest of the year. Because even though there's still going to be a lot of movement through the rest of the year, we're already mostly in the kind of energy that's going to be in the background for the rest of the year. So you can imagine it as like you've walked into a room and the room still is being arranged, and then come the spring equinox, everything is arranged. And now you're like, okay, now I know how to operate in this room. I know how to move through the room as I'm looking around your space.
That feels so literally accurate. It's kind of scary for me personally.
I mean, maybe I'm just picking up on like what's going on for you, but I think metaphorically, I think that that's like a great way to think about these first few months of the year. Like things are being arranged, and you can think about it as like things are being rearranged in your consciousness. Things are being rearranged in like how you approach your life or your relationships, because it's all going to be showing up in people's charts in different places. But we're all going to be like, what is this new dance that we're doing? And by March, we're like, okay, now we kind of understand what the steps are. It's still going to feel very, very new, but at least we'll have a better understanding of like the dance we're all doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think it helps give people permission and awareness around the fact that January and February can be the preparation, and they can be the processing and the pause before the action. When we enter the new year, there's often that push to take action right away and to have it all figured out right away. And I think with the Aries energy that we do have in the beginning of the year, that we can maybe fall into that trap. I want this to be a reminder that like January and February can use that to prepare. And if you've taken that pause and that processing time, then you'll be ready to enter March and the rest of the year with clarity and true intention and truth.
Yeah. And I think a lot of folks are going to feel the building of the Aries energy in February and want to take action. Yeah. Another big theme when we're talking about leadership, it shows up very strongly in leadership, but I think it's across the board for this whole year when we're talking about fire energy and we're talking about the air energy that will also be building through the year. Thinking before you act, or being able to hold the motivation or hold the energy in your body before you just use it and just like go and do the thing, is going to be really important for everybody. You know, we can all be reactive, you know, especially if we're feeling really heated or if we're feeling really passionate about something. But the ability to hold on to that passion for just a little bit longer and to really assess, is this the right use of this energy? Or do I intuitively know that I need to slow down a little bit, or I need to re-examine this conversation, or I just need to like think through what it is I'm about to act on. I think it's gonna be a really valuable skill for a lot of people, just to take a little bit of a pause before acting. And I think it's gonna be really hard to do. But what you're suggesting in terms of thinking of January and February and even early March as the time to build that skill of, you can pause, you can let all of the dust settle before you act, is going to be something that people can carry with them through the rest of the year and well beyond 2026, because Saturn's going to be in Aries for another 2 years, Neptune's going to be in Aries for another 12 years. Like, we're going to be having a lot of fiery energy for a while. The only thing that I do want to say also about March is that we have another eclipse in Virgo. And this particular eclipse, it's a big day because Mercury also is cazimi that day, Jupiter trines the sun that day, Venus is conjunct Neptune and Saturn. I'm sorry, through like this 4-day period of early March. And so it also just feels like there's this pile up of really clarifying energy in terms of our values, what kind of things that we want to expand, also feeling deep levels of healing and catharsis through action that is done together, or like values being expressed and acted upon together. And so it feels like eclipse season, this eclipse season is like familiar and different in February and March because we have the new eclipse series in Aquarius starting. We are wrapping up the Virgo eclipse series, but it feels like, especially in early March, there's again that reorganization energy is still very strong, and there's a desire to expand our values and expand our values with connecting to others. There's a lot of opportunity to come together in March and take action around the things that we really value and that we want to see grow.
I love that. I'm excited about that eclipse. I mean, I feel comfortable in Virgo energy. I'm very interested to see how the Aquarius eclipse series impacts me, but I think this theme around healing and community with the Virgo eclipse in March is going to be really, really nourishing for a lot of people.
I think so too. There's the potentiality in this first quarter of the year to get kind of like swept up in fantasy, but there's also the potential for very cathartic, healing, expansive experiences and connecting experiences for people.
All right, so that's the first quarter.
The first quarter of the year.
Okay, I feel good about it.
Okay, I do too. I'm very excited about it. Q2, Q3 get a little bit funkier. So in April, the theme that I labeled for this is burn down the barriers to your authenticity and heightened inflammation. This is, again, another outer planet moving into a new sign. We already experienced this energy a little bit in 2025, but now as it moves into this new sign, it's officially staying for the next 7 years, and that's Uranus moving into Gemini. And again, we experienced this starting November 7th of 2025. As we're recording, it just retrograded back into Taurus yesterday. But once it moves into Gemini in April of 2026, it'll be there for the next 7 years. This is really exciting air energy. So this is where the air meets the fire. It's just like a ramping up of ideation, technological innovation, social experiences. Like if everyone wants to look back to what the beginning of July of 2025 felt like for them, it's a very good indication of what April is going to feel like for them. April 2026 feels like for them. And everyone that I was talking to around that time was just saying they had so many social interactions going on. And it was all very exciting and it was really fun, but it was also like, when can I catch a breath? And so it might feel like that in mid-April, beginning of April. And at the same time, we have this Mercury, Mars, Saturn conjunction happening in very early Aries at the end of April as well, which can feel like, again, very inflammatory kind of energy. So the way that I'm seeing this month is that there's, again, a heightening or like a ramping up of wanting to connect, wanting to go out and be social, wanting to have all the conversations, wanting to take all of the actions on all the ideas, because we're going to have that emphasis. We're going to be having a lot of activity going on in our minds, a lot of ideas coming to the surface, a lot of new desires for how we want to connect with one another and share ourselves. And again, really tap into new levels of authenticity of like, I'm fully embracing this side of myself and this is how I want to share that self and express that self. And we're going to have the motivation. We're going to have the energy to back up all of those ideas coming into form in some way. And so it can feel like we're starting to run really fast. Like we were jogging the beginning of the year and now we're like on a sprint. And we don't know exactly how we got here. And now we're just sprinting. And so, and it's like, wait. How do I slow this train down? And it's probably going to feel like that for at least around this middle to end part of April. It's going to feel like very, very heightened. And it's a great learning opportunity for us to be able to, when we have the time, when we have the ability to zoom out and say, how did I get here? Like, what were the choices that I made that brought me to this point where I feel like I'm driving with no brakes and I can't stop or I can't slow down? And again, that can manifest in actual social interactions, in work ramping up for some people, in like a lot of heightened family time with other people, or like family confrontations with people. It can manifest in all these different ways, but being able to take time, even just for little increments, to say, what were the choices that got me to this point, I think will help people clarify how they can make space and slow down in the future. Because again, Uranus is going to be in Gemini for 8 years. We're going to be feeling this intensification of our brains just going a mile a minute. Not all the time during that 8 years, but there's going to be pockets of it where it feels like, wow, how did I just get that flood of information just coming to me? And now I'm taking action on it before I even realized what I was doing, kind of vibe. I feel like even describing that, I was just word vomiting. I was like tapping into the intensity of the experience, and I'm like, it's going to feel like that. Like, it's just going to feel like a lot. It's going to feel like a lot. Yeah.
And what's coming up for me is that if we took the time to get clear and get grounded and get our rituals and communities around us in January and February, we will feel more prepared for this. Like, we'll have those intentions, those tools already set into place to fall back on when we need them, when things like really start to get crazy. Or we'll at least know, like, okay, things are crazy, but I decided I wanted this, or I didn't want this, you know? And so we can then redirect or lean in the ways that we need to.
No matter what, having community is going to be really important, because especially come like the April 19th, 20th, it might feel again like we're experiencing a lot of inflammatory emotions, or we're having inflammatory experiences with other people. And when we have a community to fall back on, or we have resources and support to fall back on when things get really intense, it can counterbalance that intensity. It can feel like this is a soft place for me to land while all of this heat or this hard stuff is happening over here, so that I can better approach that hard stuff because I've been supported and held in these other ways. So absolutely, like whatever that looks like. And I think community is such a beautiful way to access that softness, because community teaches us how to be resilient, right? It teaches us how to make sense of ourselves and make sense of other people in situations that aren't always the most comfortable or ideal. And it helps us to address other situations like that and other relationships like that in other parts of our lives. And it's a space where we also feel a sense of belonging and a sense of grounding and anchoring. I think it's a very, very key tool.
And making sure you're in the right communities for the right reasons, like really making sure those communities support who you're becoming and what you want, versus just the ones that an old identity wanted, or a past version of self, or who you were told you should be. Like really knowing and choosing with discernment who you are surrounding yourself with.
Yes, absolutely. Please use that clip for everything, because I think that that's so key. Like when we're talking about the leadership theme in the background of this year, when we're talking about the new identity or the new self or the embracing of like our truer nature as part of the theme of this year, you have to have a community that supports this version of you that is coming into wholeness and coming into embodiment, and choose again the leaders that align with this new version of you, or that are helping you expand into this new version of you, and not somebody who, aligned with the old version of you, because we're really stepping into a whole new world here. And that version of you is going to be a whole new person.
Yes.
So Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and I think that really requires presence. Like, I think when we're stepping into a whole new version of ourselves, it can be so easy to fall back into automatic old patterns and habits and thinking. And we have to be present with, oh no, that's just a habitual thought. Like, that's not actually what I think or want now.
Yeah.
And so being present with your transformation and choosing from a present place.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Completely. Slowing down as much as possible.
Yes.
In these months. Okay, we're getting into my two favorite months of the year. So May and June.
Specifically
I'm very
this
excited
year
about.
or in general?
Of 2026.
Okay.
Yes. And it's just because there's a lot of really beautiful Venus stuff happening, a lot of beautiful Jupiter stuff happening. I will say the first few days of May might still feel like a little bit sticky, a little bit intense. We have a full moon in Scorpio that is a little bit tricky for some people. I know not all people, but for some people it can feel like really intense. And then at the same time, we have this Mars squaring Jupiter situation that is, I think, also going to feel a little combative, or like big disruptive energy. But then once we get to the new moon in Taurus and May 16th, it really starts to feel really, really lovely because Venus is joining Jupiter in Cancer, and that just feels like very nourishing energy, very supportive and connecting energy. Some of my favorite days of the year are between May 16th and May 20th. It just feels like there's so much, so much care and so much awareness of how it is that we want to care for one another. And if it feels like, again, things have been on fire for the first part of the year, this is when we get to like step into the bath, and it's like a really delicious cooling bath with like all of our favorite people. Like maybe we're swimming in a pool, like I don't know, like that's the kind of the vision that's coming to mind. Or like we're in a really beautiful lake and we're just like enjoying the scenery and we're enjoying each other's company, and it just feels like we're all doing this together. It just feels really, really lovely. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about the full moon that month too. It just feels like this is the month, especially the second half of the month, where we just get to really sink into connection and nourishment and care and love for one another.
Oh, I love that. And I love May in general every year. And so, I feel like if, after all the action and preparation and all the things that happened the first few months of the year, May is kind of a time to be like, okay, I can just like revel in where I'm at now and who I've become now and what my life is like now. And especially if we were present and intentional with all of that, we can really just like soak in all the goodness around us.
Yeah. And I think it will also come to people naturally. Like, I think it'll feel like if April was a hyper intensification of things, it'll feel like, I think a lot of people will consciously choose after that intensity to slow down and to choose things that feel really nourishing. So I think it'll also arrive for people really naturally to, again, kind of counterbalance all of the heat of April. And then in May, it just feels like, we can just rely on all of the things, or we can lean into all of the things that we've established for ourselves, or that we're missing after all of the heightened energy of April. And there's also a moment too on May 22nd when the Sun and Uranus come together in Gemini, where it just feels like, again, there's this emboldening of our authentic selves. Like there's a coalescing of who we're becoming and who we're embodying, really feeling like it's clicking around this time. And it might still feel like, again, our brains are a little on fire, but I think with the backdrop of all the other energy, it's also going to feel like, and this is how I can embody it, and this is how I can share it in a way that feels really nurturing and really, really supportive from like a physical and embodied and emotional stance as well.
I really, really love that. I feel like it's finally us we've like been sewing this jacket of like who we want to be, and now we can finally like put it on.
Yes. Yeah. And like wear it out with other people. Like we're all doing it together, which feels really, really good. So I'm very excited about May. And then for June, we have some other of the best days of the year. When Venus and Jupiter come together on June 9th, that just, again, feels like the peak moment of this kind of connecting energy. There's also this moment on June 17th where Venus opposes Pluto. So Venus will move into Leo, and it'll feel really spicy and exciting and fun and playful, and it'll oppose Pluto. And
I love my natal Venus is in Leo, so I'm like,
same. This is our energy. Yeah. But so I'm actually excited about this day because Venus opposing Pluto, the last time Venus and Pluto had like an arrangement that was kind of like this was when we had the biggest No Kings gatherings across the whole world. Oh. And if you look back at that day, which I think was like, it was the weekend after October 13th. Venus was in Libra and Pluto was in Aquarius, and it was just this nice trine. But I look at that weekend and there was just so much coming together in solidarity and again, this like desire for connection of like, we're in this together, we're doing this together. Look at how much impact we can make when we come together with our shared values. And it feels like this day, it might not feel quite as connecting, but I still think it's going to be like a great day where there's a lot of coming together in support of what we collectively, the change we collectively want to be making together. So I'm excited about that day as well. And as we're building to the summer solstice, it just feels like we're building towards, again, this it's a different kind of intensification of like what does care, what does nourishment, what does really tending to ourselves all mean. And so I feel like that's also very much a part of the story in June.
Yeah, and I feel like an energy that was coming up for me is around focusing on what we have in common versus what separates us.
Yeah.
And really being aware of like our differences and, you know, not ignoring that or suppressing it, but like really choosing to connect over what brings us together and how we can make change through that, and celebrating that and celebrating the fact that there is goodness in the world.
Yes. It's funny, on the way here, I've been listening to this book called How We Can Heal. And I think that's the title of the book. But essentially, what I just listened to was where the author is talking about how the opposite of othering is not making everyone the same. It's embracing everybody in our differences. And I feel like that's a perfect example of this.
Yes.
Of we're all so different, we're all so unique, we're all so authentically ourselves, and we are all showing up as leaders in different ways. And isn't it beautiful we can all come together and resource from one another all of that diversity. It's looking at nature and seeing how everything is inherently itself, but it all supports the whole structure. And it feels like we're getting a lot of that reminder in May and June, especially. So, yeah. But I think also for the whole year, I think that's kind of like a bit of the backdrop. It just comes in and out in its clarity at different times more than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we can really focus on that kind of energy, then we won't get caught up into the overly activating, fiery, egotistical energy of Aries or what might be going on in the background, and really focus on like leading from our heart and making change from our heart. And I feel like that is exactly what the world needs right now.
Yeah. Yes. What It Takes to Heal is the name of the book. But you teed me up perfectly, because at the end of June, Jupiter moves into Leo, and this is the last, I mean, Jupiter is not an outer planet necessarily, but it's the last of the kind of farther planets to change signs. Jupiter changes signs every year. It stays in a sign for about a year. It's been in Cancer for the last year, for most of 2025, the first half of 2026. When Jupiter moves into Leo, this is when we really start to get clear about what a just kind of leader and a just kind of identity for ourselves individually and collectively starts to mean and really looks like. it's a ramping up of fire energy for sure. But we're starting to expand in our desire to find really, really wise and just and capable leadership. And it's kind of like another maturation of understanding what leadership needs to look like. One of the things that I didn't mention about Saturn in Aries is that it has a tendency to be kind of authoritarian in nature, because Saturn is the authoritarian. It is the planet that comes down hard on the word no, and like, these are the rules and this is how you have to stick with it. And with Aries, which can feel like very militaristic kind of energy, sometimes the two of those things together can engender authoritarianism. And Jupiter moving into Leo, I feel like, even though it's also fire energy, and it might sometimes look like fighting fire with fire, it's also helping us collectively start to find and see and generate and support leaders that are not authoritarian in nature, but who are like very generous in nature, and who are very wise in nature, and who really are thinking about what is good for all of us, and not leading from a sense of fear, but more leading from a sense of courage and strength.
Yeah, I always think when Leo's at its best, it's fire with heart. And fire with also some levity and lightness. I think that Leo can bring that playful energy, but with seriousness. Not taking themselves so seriously, but taking the matter seriously.
And with Jupiter, Jupiter can be very dogmatic in its expression, and it can sometimes be blind to, what it believes. But at its best, it's, like I said, it's very wise, it's very generous, it's very much about like, how are we doing this for all of us? And what is the real truth in the matter? And when I think about Leo, it's very creative, it's very leadership oriented. It can also be very egotistical and like very centered on the self. But when I think about the best of those of Jupiter and Leo together, it's just like really inspiring leadership that has the power to make an impact for a long, long time. And that is what I'm really hoping we see a lot more with Jupiter moving into Leo. But I think it's also just going to be, again, like a heightened awareness of, when are we seeing unbalanced, egotistical, competitive, militaristic kind of leadership, and when are we seeing really just fortifying, generous, the kind of leadership that we really want to follow? And I think it's going to be part of the conversations that we're all having, and also what we're exploring in ourselves. I think that we're going to be very aware of ourselves in 2026 and where our egos get in the way and where they rear their heads unapologetically, and getting comfortable with that kind of expression in ourselves.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like so far there's these two themes about like community and individualism. And so we just have to be centered in ourselves to know how we want to show up in community. And have that balance of like interdependence, really. And have that balance of who am I, what are my goals, hyper focused on our own path, and then bringing that out into the world embodied.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what you just said about who we are as individuals and who we are collectively, and how we bring our individual leadership into the collective, and how do we make sense of ourselves based off of who we are in the collective. That's very much the Aquarius Leo axis. And that's also the eclipse series that we're entering into. We have the Aquarius eclipse in February, as I mentioned. We'll have a Leo eclipse towards the later part of the year, which I'll talk about. And then all of the other stuff that's going on is also supporting those same themes. I think if you're listening to this in 2025, you can already say that those themes, again, are already here, because there's all these conversations about individualism versus collectivism, and leadership and reciprocity, and how we're supporting each other from the bottom, and like who are the people at the very top that have, more money than God, and like all of it is very much a part of the conversation. Again, it's just going to be heightened in 2026, and especially come July, it's just going to get very ramped up. So
let's get into it. Let's get into July.
So now we're in the third quarter of the year. I titled July, The Revolution Has Arrived.
Oh, wow.
Because there's a lot that happens in July. There's a very intense aspect that happens to fall on July 4th that I'm also looking at as a very inflammatory kind of day. Mars and Uranus come together in Gemini, which historically is not like a great signature for the United States in particular, but of course also whatever happens in the United States has this unfortunate or fortunate ripple effect into the rest of the world. So it just feels like it could be a very explosive, surprising kind of day that I would just like mark with a little red X on your calendar. Just be wary of that. So the reason why I'm also saying that this is going to be when the quote unquote revolution really begins. We've already been kind of in this like major shape-shifting energy. I just feel like everything is kind of coalescing and concretizing in July. And it's because Jupiter and the sun come together and oppose Pluto all around the same time. And the sun and Jupiter in Leo. The sun and Jupiter coming together is one of the auspicious days of the year. It's considered to be one of the best alignments. But when it's opposing Pluto, it feels like there's a very intense power struggle of, again, what is our ideal version of our identities, our leadership, our creativity, even our collective consciousness, and how is that in opposition to the change that we need to be making on a collective level, or the authoritarian systems that we're fighting against. And so it just feels like there's this clarifying of like, this is what we're fighting for, and this is what we're all working towards on a collective level. And there's like a clarification of what it all looks like now that we're here. So it feels like at the beginning of July, we're in this kind of murky, still kind of like intensely heated moment. Mercury is retrograde, and then Neptune and Saturn station retrograde. And then towards the end of the month, it's just like, okay, things are clarifying. Now I understand where I'm definitively going and what I am striving for. Again, in terms of leadership, authenticity, creativity, identity, all of that. So if we're looking at the whole year, April is heightened intensification. May is really lovely towards the end of the month. June is really lovely and connecting. But then we start to get into this conversation like we were just talking about of like authority versus the collective, or leadership versus collectivism, or individualism versus collectivism. And July is the solidifying of what that conversation needs to look like and what the balance of it all needs to look like as well. Like, how are we taking care of ourselves and also fighting the fights that we need to be fighting, or like advocating for the things that we need to be advocating for.
And I feel like it's the emphasis on the integration of the two even more. I think even when we can be very clear on how we want to lead, how we want to show up, what we care about, it can get very muddy and mixed up when we start to do it in the collective. I feel like this is a moment to be like, okay, I've gotten clear on it when I'm in the safe confines of my own house, and now I'm out in the world, and now I have a moment to get clear again.
Yes. As the sun and Jupiter come together, there's a lot of clarification around that. As Mercury stations direct, there's a lot of clarification around that. There's just a lot of coming into a new level of consciousness of, this is the embodied version of the leader that I want to be towards the end of July, and having to actively demonstrate that on a regular basis as well. I think we're all going to be asked to step into a certain amount of leadership through 2026, but it feels like this is the moment where we have to like rise to the occasion for whatever reason. And especially when we're thinking about, you know, July and August and like these peak months of summer energy, there's already so much activity happening in the background because there's so much solar energy. And so I think it's just going to feel like, it's going to feel pretty heightened. Just that we have a lot of energy moving through us and a lot of energy in the collective, despite the conversations that we're having as well, or in conjunction with all the conversations that we're having as well. I'm seeing the whole year as there's like still a lot of fire and air. Taurus season is really beautiful and luxurious and lovely and connecting. And Gemini season is just like very nourishing. I'd say it feels a little more like Cancer energy than it does Gemini energy. The way that I also think about all of the astrology is that, you know, there's the planets, but then there's also our home planet. And that is also informing how we're interpreting and making sense of all of this information. So in the backdrop of Mars conjunct Uranus, which is like very inflammatory and very intense and explosive energy, we also have the sun in Cancer, and we have the heightened energy of summer at that time. And so it feels like there's a lot of all of that coming together. We have the seasons that we have to take into account as well. We have to consider Earth as part of all of these planets.
Absolutely.
And how they're communicating themselves. Yeah. But August, it's very Leo. It's very solar. It's very firepower kind of energy. I themed this one as loud conversations about authority, leadership, and expression. Like the solar eclipse on the 12th in Leo, I wrote, it feels like we're screaming for attention almost from our oppressors. When I say things like that, it can, in my mind, can easily go to like oppressive systems or oppressive people out there. But I also want to encourage people as they're thinking about these themes of leadership and authoritarianism, et cetera, what does that look like from the inside as well? Like, where do we hold ourselves to hard and fast and rigid rules that actually don't make sense anymore, or actually withhold us from stepping into our authenticity or stepping into deeper connection with others or compassion? What does oppression look like within the self, and how is that holding you back from true, authentic, creative self-expression? Wow. And that, I think, will also ripple into the larger conversations that we'll be seeing collectively as well.
Yeah, I really like that you said that, because we've been talking a lot about the distinction between the self and collective. And when it comes to oppression, it's so easy for us to immediately think of the collective in that way. I think bringing the self into it is so empowering, is so transformative, and then allows us to be a better leader in community. But I don't think it's always a perspective that we take, and I think that that's so important.
Yeah. One of my biggest themes that I feel like I can't talk about enough is that everything starts with you. Like, it all starts in here. It exists out there because it starts here. And I think the more we get comfortable with addressing where the systems out there are also reflective in ourselves, the more we can start to, like, this is, if we're doing the work on ourselves in here, it can also make more sense when we're thinking about how do we dismantle these things out in the world, or how do we create more fairness or justice or compassion or empathy or whatever it is that we're advocating for, desiring. We know how to do that. We know how to do it because we've done it within ourselves. And we can do it on a one-to-one level in our friendships and in our families, and then we can do it in our workplaces. Like, it has a ripple effect into everything else, but it has to start with here. And especially if people are feeling like they don't have a lot of power in this next year, that's a great place for sure. Like you said, it's very empowering. It's a great place to start to be like, what am I unconsciously doing? How am I operating in ways that are continuing to promote these kinds of systems to continue to thrive?
It'll also help us not be so reactive when we go out into the world, because we'll know, okay, I can't blame or shame other people or get so active when I know what's in myself. I've looked at this darkness or these shadows or broken down these pieces of myself, and so I can have more compassion for other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, even as I'm saying this, there's a part in my head that's like, well, don't forget, like, there are massive systems, and like, there are massive things that are completely out of our control that are creating this world, and that, you know, we shouldn't take on all the responsibility. But I do think that, like, in the moments when you feel like there's nothing that you can do, there is something that you can do, and you can do the inner healing work for yourself, and even doing it together in groups. I mean, I think we're talking about community. Like, if you come together with some friends and you're like, okay, let's talk about these shadowy sides of ourselves and like get a little more intimate with those parts of ourselves, that can be really, really healing.
Yes.
And there's like so many moments throughout the whole year where it's just like very ripe for all of that to happen, and really good moments for us to utilize that kind of energy. Yeah.
That's actually something I'm so passionate about, is bringing our shadow, our shame, our darkness to safe communities that we feel like can hold us and see us in that capacity, because then we're not so alone with it. Then we don't take it or ourselves so seriously. Then we can take the shame away and we can just like understand it in a better, different light, and we're not so isolated and alone in it. And it brings back immediately that interdependence instead of creating separation, just in a different way.
Yes. Yeah, completely. I know I want to work through, or not work through, but in 2026, I want to really think about how can I bring more of myself into communal spaces, or how can I share more of myself just in community, even if that means just by being present in spaces, because I know that that's really the strongest way that we can get through anything, is by feeling like we have this network of support.
Yes.
And tapping into that. Yeah.
Same.
And on that note, September, I just put perhaps the calmest month of the year.
We love to hear it. My birthday month.
It's so simple. We have
amazing.
a Mars square Saturn moment at the beginning of the month on September 1st, which is like stop start energy. It's like we want to do something, but we feel like we can't. It can feel a little frustrating. And then on the day of the Virgo new moon, on the 10th, Uranus stations retrograde, which feels poignant because Virgo and Gemini, where Uranus is, are linked because they're both ruled by Mercury. And so it feels like there's, again, something coming into clarification, or like ideas coming to the surface, or a conversation about letting go of perfectionism or perfectionistic tendencies, or being self-critical and embracing more of our authentic true nature. It feels like a great day to have like a lot of great conversations with people. And then we just have like a few Mercury moments. We have the fall equinox and we have a full moon in Aries. It's just like a normal month. It's an integration month.
Love that
is what
for
I'm
us.
thinking, because we've had so much stuff, and then September we can be like, what has been happening?
I think that September is a perfect time for that to happen, because we're winding down from the summer. People are preparing to go back to school. I think it's a really good time for us to all get our bearings and put our feet in the earth.
Yes, touch grass. Like
Yeah.
September, that's all you should do. It's just like put your feet in the grass, lay on grass, be in the earth. Like that's it. I love that for all of us. And then come October, it's also kind of a calm month. There's not a lot of, well, I say that and then I'm like, oh wait, but Venus stations retrograde in this month. So that's probably the most intense situation, is that Venus does station retrograde in Scorpio, going back into Libra with Mars and Leo. So it feels a little stretchy, a little crunchy, creepy crawly. And then we have a Mercury retrograde that starts at the end of October. But the way that I see Venus retrogrades, which that being like the main theme that we're dealing with in October, is that it's really an opportunity to get clear on the things that we've added onto ourselves that we are ready to shed. The whole accompanying myth that goes with a Venus retrograde has to do with going into the underworld, going into the deeper parts of ourselves and shedding all of the masks, all the layers, and reemerging as a more true version of ourselves. A version of ourselves that is more comfortable with both light and dark, and not feeling like we have to wear as many masks. And especially because it starts in Scorpio, which is an energy that is all about integration and integrating both light and dark, and then retrogrades back into Libra, which is Venus's home sign. It feels like there is a coming into a more true expression of ourselves and a more true harmonious version of ourselves by doing the deep inner work that is very shadowy in nature. And this is a fantastic time to definitely come together in community and do that work together. It will always feel stretchy. A Venus retrograde always will feel very tender, and it might feel very relational in nature, but it's just a really fantastic moment to turn and look at the things that maybe we have been avoiding, especially when it comes to the other themes we've been exploring in terms of our authentic selves, in terms of our creativity, in terms of our leadership, and say like, okay, what is inhibiting me from really stepping into that version of myself, or these roles that I really want to embody it's a great pause moment of the year, or as much of a pause as we can get in this year.
What you said is exactly what I was thinking. A theme that's come up time and time again is going inwards, connecting to yourself, and then bringing that out into the world, embodied. And I feel like that Scorpio to Libra transition is exactly that.
Yes, yeah, more so than other times of the year, because again, we're talking about a lot of expressive energy that we're navigating for most of the year. And again, when we have the Mercury retrogrades, which Mercury retrograde is also simultaneously happening in Scorpio as this Venus retrograde is happening, these are the opportunities when we're in the water signs to be like, what does my intuition say? What does my body say? What does my body need? How am I really nourishing myself psychically and on a vibrational energetic level, on a molecular level, not so much from a heart-centered space or a mentally centered space, but from like a felt-centered space. And so it's a really great time to just like, if you're in your feelings around this time, let yourself be, because there's a lot that the body is doing, that the mind is doing, and this is a time to digest, to let things settle, to let things really come together. I think about how coming into homeostasis and coming into an equilibrium for the body requires like drinking water and rest and slowing down. And this is a great time to tap into all of those practices to let things really fuse and find a more harmonious flow.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Venus also about like beauty and pleasure and sensuality? So I feel like tapping into that as well can also really help ground us. If we're feeling too emotional or all over the place, we can make our surroundings beautiful, get really into the senses, and just allow ourselves to be in what we find pleasurable.
Yeah. And in a Venus retrograde, we might be reevaluating those things, which makes it even more of a good idea to play with it. Like, what does beauty look like for me right now? What do I think is beautiful? Let me go explore that. And I love the phrase, put yourself in the way of beauty. Do that as much as you can and play with like, what is beautiful to me right now? What does beauty even mean to me right now? Maybe there's things that I thought were beautiful in the past that now I'm seeing actually are not beautiful to me anymore. And like this more like raw version of expression is what I find beautiful, or, you know, whatever, but playing with it.
I really, really love that. And I feel like that kind of touches on what we were talking about at the very beginning, like not coming in with preconceived ideas or attachments to who you have to be or who you were, and letting yourself explore who you are now.
Yes. And every Venus retrograde will inspire you to do that. It will inspire all of us to do that. And actually, I didn't think about this before, but every Venus retrograde corresponds to a previous Venus retrograde 8 years prior. So you can look at what was going on in 2018, probably around October, around that time, to see like what were you exploring in terms of beauty and connection and pleasure, and what was shifting at that time, because there will be similar themes that will probably come up.
Wow. That's very interesting for me personally.
There's a lot of things, there's so many things in astrology that are just like mathematical in nature. And Venus is one of those things. Her cycle, including the retrogrades, actually forms a 5-petaled star. If you look at it, it's just like...
Looks like a rose.
It looks like a rose. Yeah, it's just so special. But that's one of those things, is that every 8 years, whenever Venus retrogrades, it's in the same sign, but with like a 2-degree shift or so. And then we get into November. So Venus and Mercury go direct on the same day in November. Mercury will be direct in Scorpio, Venus will be direct in Libra on November 13th. So one thing I want to say is that Mars enters its pre-retrograde shadow in Leo on November 5th. What I want people to know is that from November 5th on until Mars officially stations retrograde, there are themes that are going to be coming up in terms of taking action around your identity, or taking action around your creativity, or the things that you want to fight for in both of those things, and also in leadership and in self-expression, all of those things that are going to be revisited 2 more times over. So November and December, just like keeping that in the back of your mind, that a lot of the themes that we've been exploring all year. But if you're feeling particularly passionate about them, or if you feel like you have a lot of competitive energy or motivating energy behind these themes from November on, we're going to come back around to them and review them a couple more times.
And is Mars station retrograde?
2027, yeah. So we won't talk about the Mars retrograde in this conversation, but just to be aware. Yeah, tune in next year, same time next year. But the themes will come back around, and it's going to be spicy for sure. Because Mars in Leo, which you also have natally, right?
I do.
And I also have natally.
Yes.
It's spicy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Love that for us.
But what also happens around November 16th and 19th, Mars, Jupiter, and the South Node all come together in Leo, and the Sun squares them at the same time from Scorpio. These are intense days, and the way that I'm seeing this is that there's a big release or shedding of old leadership, old identity, old creative energy. There's a lot of things that are shed and released and dying off in terms of like ways that we used to see all of those themes. And particularly with Mars and Jupiter, Mars is about cutting things out, and Jupiter makes everything it touches bigger, and the South Node is about release. So I'm just seeing that there's like a lot of letting go around this time, like a lot of things being specifically saying like, we are no longer doing it this way. And I think we're going to be feeling it individually, of course, but we're also going to definitely be feeling it collectively.
I mean, I really love that because this is right around Samhain and lunar Samhain. I know on the Gregorian calendar, it's always the 31st of October or the 1st of November, but exact Samhain changes with the lunar calendar, and so it's usually in the beginning of November, and that's just such the theme of that time. The energy of Samhain is the shedding, and Scorpio season too, of course.
Yes, yeah.
So it feels like the perfect time to be doing that work.
Yes, and I will say that if you have strong Leo placements, it might feel like a true ego death. Generally, with the South Node moving through Leo, it might feel like that for a while, but it's going to be really, really peak around this time. And really from November 16th to the 25th, there's just, again, a lot of reorganization in our consciousnesses, like with the Sun in Scorpio and then also moving into Sagittarius, and then it subsequently trines Neptune and opposes Uranus and sextiles Pluto. All of the inner planets are doing crazy things to the outer planets all year, but it just feels like there's a big shift in who are we, what are we moving towards, how are we thinking collectively about all of these themes around leadership, and really having to reckon with space that we're making and space that is being made where there once were people at the head. It feels like there's a lot of old leadership that is, again, leaving. And so in the wake of that release, we either have to get comfortable with the space that's being made, or we have to get really clear about what we're putting in that place. I would argue that that's also a big theme of this year, maybe more so of 2025, but also 2026. We're making a lot of room, and that can feel very destabilizing, and it can make us feel really insecure in a lot of ways, and it can feel really scary. And so we have to be very conscious of what are we putting in that place, if we're going to fill it with anything, and also being able to hold space for possibility and for lots of undefined energy.
I do feel like that's a huge part of what 2025 has been, is really getting rid of all the excess, all that no longer is us, and being okay with the empty space and not yet rushing to fill it, and being okay with this in between, this pause, this processing. And I feel like 2026, there is still some of that woven in, but a lot of it is gaining clarity on what is meant to come fill that space.
Yeah. And speaking of what's coming to fill that space, I think we get a little bit of that clarity come December when Saturn and Neptune station direct again in Aries. We have another kind of intense moment on December 4th when Mars squares Uranus. Again, those two planets making any aspect to each other is intense, inflammatory, explosive. But there's a lot of Mercury stuff going on in December that I think is going to help us clarify. It's going to pull back another layer of clarification of what we need to build, what we need to step into, what we're creating. We'll feel a lot of that in early December and then also towards the end of December as well. But it might feel like in December that there's like a lot of stop-start energy because Jupiter is also stationing retrograde. So it's like we want to be doing these things. We're having the ideas. Things are starting to come into like a little more crystallization where we're digesting things a little bit more and clarifying things a little bit more. But we have some of the energy, but we don't have all the energy. Or some days we have it and other days we don't. Or maybe it's just like end of the year holiday stuff where it's just like, I want to do this thing, but I also have this obligation, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and that's kind of aligned with what I was about to say is it plays off of the seasonal energy. Like we're now in winter, and that is the time to kind of start to slow down and go inwards and not take the action and to process. And maybe we have some ideas of what we want to do, but it's not time yet.
Yeah.
And so I think that, like you were saying before, it's like the seasonal energy, they all play off of each other.
And in December, it'll feel like there's a lot of ideas that are percolating, and we just have to get comfortable with perhaps a little bit of frustrating energy of like wanting to take action on the ideas, but not necessarily having the capacity or the space. And that's just the nature. I've been thinking about this time between like the end of October and the winter solstice is time that we need to be doing less and to be really, really resting and to be digesting and processing and composting. But at the same time, our social world, like the culture that we're in is like, no, we've got everything going on. We have so much that we have to do and that we have to, like, we have this social obligation and this money to spend and like all this stuff. And I think every year there's an opportunity to really get clear about how you want to be spending your energy around this time of year. And I think it's just extra heightened in December 2026.
Yeah, I think December is so like all about discernment. It really is. And it's about being okay with what you have decided to spend your energy on and not feeling like you need to do all the things and not feeling guilt for saying no or for choosing what truly fuels you or feels aligned for you. And use this podcast as a reminder and permission to be hyper aware and hyper attached to what you should say yes to and what you should pour your energy into for December and for the beginning of winter.
Absolutely. The winter solstice, it's right before a full moon in Cancer and a sun square Neptune moment. And I just really love this moment as well as a time to nourish, to again come back into the body, come back into the felt experience, to take some time to look back on the whole year and say, what roller coaster did I just go through? And how much of that am I carrying into the next year? Every winter solstice is a fantastic moment to pause, but especially this year with the full moon so close to it and there's a sun trine Jupiter moment just beforehand. It's a really beautiful time to appreciate everything that you've been through, everything that you've survived, everything that you've built and that you've created and how you've connected with people and how you've tended to yourself. But really use that, I'm going to actually say December 18th to 23rd, like use that chunk of time to just be in it, like be in the appreciation, be in the gratitude, be in the care, and let yourself rest in it.
Especially because I feel like this year is going to be a time to try on these new identities, to embody who we are becoming, who we've become after 2025 of preparing for that. And so December can be this moment to look back on that and be like, oh, my first year in this new identity, having this new role, what went well, what didn't go well, what do I need to process? Really being with that and being proud of yourself for that, regardless of how it ended up, being proud of your confidence and your courage, even more so, to try that new identity out.
Yes, absolutely. And the only thing that I would add to that too, because I think that we all need a little bit of this, but also to be really honest and be really comfortable with like where you have made mistakes.
Yes.
And not to beat yourself up by any means, but to also know like, okay, I didn't show up as the leader that I want to be in that moment? And what am I learning from that?
And why? Like,
And
what
why?
impacted that?
Yeah, not at all to be like overly self-critical or anything, but especially when we're thinking about stepping into more embodied leaders in this next year, where can we also recognize when we need to be humble with others, with ourselves, where we also need to refine, and where we maybe need to check our reactions or our impulses or any of that fiery energy.
And I hope that that's something that our whole society collectively can work on in leadership as a whole. It's become so ingrained in our minds that giving feedback or admitting where we went wrong is negative, or having someone call us out is negative, or it always has to be heated and confrontational. When really we're never going to get it 100% right.
Yeah.
You know, and we never can know how we're going to impact someone who has a wildly different life history than us. And so we have to be open to getting the feedback and to being aware and accepting of where we fell short with neutrality and
Or with curiosity.
yeah, and some softness around that. So I think that that's so important, and this is a moment to do that. And I think especially that full moon in Cancer can give us that support to kind of look at it all with a little bit more softness, and it might make us very emotional, but I think that if we kind of go inwards and sit on the couch with the fire and our tea and just like journal about it, we can look at it all with some compassion.
Yes, absolutely. And there was one thing that you said in there that I would invite as another like thing to think about for this year, also from what it takes to heal, is thinking about conflict as an opportunity to deepen into relationship.
Yes.
Conflict arises on an interpersonal level because there is a closeness, and as we come in more closely, we start to recognize where there is, you know, incompatibility or friction, and it's asking for there to be a reinstation of compatibility or a reinstation of coming together and closeness. And so, especially with all of the potentially combative energy of the year, how can we start to think about conflict not as inherently divisive, but as inherently an opportunity to deepen in our relationships with one another?
Yeah.
And inviting again that curiosity that Uranus and Gemini will bring. Like, there will be so much curiosity, but inviting that into the moment where things feel really hot and heated, to be like, how can I think about this differently? How can we find common ground here? How can I be a little bit more creative in how I'm thinking about your experience and sharing my experience, et cetera, et cetera. So that also as an invitation for folks.
Yeah, definitely. And that can feel really, really vulnerable. And we have to be willing to go there. And that's why having our own rituals and tools and staying connected to ourselves and surrounding ourselves with the support that we need is so important, because then we will feel safe to be vulnerable in that way and to come back together. The repair is the most important thing in relationships.
Yeah.
And so being okay with the tension or the fighting, regardless of what the relationship is, as long as we know we have the capacity to repair.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hold that word repair and reparation for 2026.
And staying curious around letting people repair. We might assume that this person will never be able to meet me there, or just like immediately have our guard and defenses up, but people can surprise you. I think we should all try to lead with the assumption that we all are on the same side, and the assumption that there is goodness there.
Yes.
In the other person.
I agree.
Wow, what a year.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot. It's a lot, but there's a lot of good moments. I'm really, really hopeful again that there's a lot of creativity. I'm really excited for the creative part of the fire air energy, that there's just going to be a lot of artistry, a lot of healing through art, a lot of healing through creativity, a lot of expressive energy that feels really expansive. Yeah. I'm really excited about that more than anything.
I honestly think it's going to be a really good year, as long as we stay connected to ourselves and in good, nourishing community.
It will be a turning point.
I think, did I use the word good? I think I want to
Yes.
use the word positively transformative.
Positively transformative. Yes, I agree with that, because I think we will look back like, 20, 30 years from now, and we'll be able to point to 2026 and be like, that's when a lot of things changed.
Yes.
And I am also hopeful that amidst a lot of the shedding of the old, which can feel very, very painful at times or really scary at times, there's a lot of opportunity for growth in really positive and positively transformative ways. So it's just about our ability to trust, again, that both things can happen at the same time, or that when a void is made, that something will fill it, and that we can make sure that it's something that we really want to be filling that space.
I think that there's so much in this episode for people to process and reflect on and really set intentions around, and a lot of also grounding, like I was saying in the very beginning, tangible tools for you to work with and prepare yourself for. And I hope that this feels really supportive to everyone. I really, really do. I feel supported. I feel excited. I'm excited to listen back to this. For yourself personally,
Yes.
how would you say you want to embrace living intuitively wild in 2026?
Something that has become very highlighted for me just in the last couple months of 2025 is that the way that I want to be, or the kind of world that I really want to be creating, is one that is very cyclical in nature. And cyclical in nature in the sense that it's just naturally cyclical, but also cyclical within the natural cycles. And I think that as we're shifting into a new type of world, a new type of dream, a new type of reality for all of us, it's important that we all consider what is the kind of world that we want to create. And one that I want to create is one that we understand that things that come up must come down. There must be times for action and stress and creativity and expression, and there must be times of rest. And especially as people say it's like dismantling patriarchal values or capitalist thinking or whatever it is, like what I see in replace of that is moving with our natural energetic cycles. And that is something that I want to bring to everything that I do in my work. That's everything that I want to be doing with myself and honoring my own energy. And to me, that feels very connected to strengthening my intuition and living in a way that feels much more connected to nature. So, yeah.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. I really, really love that. And I'm excited to see what this year brings for you, to see how you transform. And I really do hope that this time next year we can be sitting on this couch and rehashing it all. I really look forward to that.
We'll have to do like a recap episode, and then also at 2027.
Yes, we'll split that. No, that's a perfect idea. It's planned. Hollis has so many amazing resources, her podcast, all her offers. Is there anything in particular you want to share?
Yeah, so if people want to follow the themes of the seasons, not so much through the months, but through the solar seasons with me, I do that every month on my podcast. I talk specifically about the lunations as well in a little more depth. So specifically, if you're craving more embodiment, tapping into the cycles of the moon and the energy of every new moon, full moon, all of that is a really great way to ground into that. So you can do that with me at my podcast. Also, we're bringing constellations, my group astrology program with my dear friend Jess, who's a fellow astrologer. We're bringing that into 2026, and we're doing it, at least at the start of the year, we're doing it with the first quarter of the year. Amazing. So if you are really interested in exploring this energy as it unfolds in real time with a group that is also exploring life through the lens of astrology, with the support of 2 life coaches, with the support of somatic resources, and just so much support, you can do that with us. It's all online. And the way that I've been thinking about it is that, like, we have to enter into all of these rooms all the time with our work, with our family, with everything. All of the rooms have a lot of lights on, and there's like a lot of energy and activity. The constellations room is where like the lights are dim. We have glow in the dark stars everywhere. We have little spotlights everywhere that are emulating the stars, and you can just integrate and digest and rest. And that's really the experience of constellation. You're welcome to join us there.
So beautiful. And I could not speak more highly of obviously Hollis and also Jess. So definitely look into that. And if you are in upstate New York or will find yourself in upstate New York, 2026 is the year that Intuitively Wild is opening its doors. So I really hope that it can be a community space for us all to get exactly what we need and come together in community in a really supportive and nourishing way, and also deepen our connection to ourselves. And Hollis will be doing also
all sorts of stuff.
I'm speaking for her, but she'll be here, and
here.
we will be doing collaborations together here. So stay tuned for all of that.
In this space, which is just so gorgeous. Like, I really wish I could, obviously it's not totally put together yet, but walking into the space, it just feels so good. I'm so excited for it to be available to the public very soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I'm not going to announce the coming in the beginning of 2026. So yes. And if you want to stay updated on all of that, the link for the waitlist email is in the show notes. Okay. Thank you for sticking around for the longest episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast yet. It's also probably one of my favorites ever. So grateful for you.
Thank you so much for this, Rachel. This was really fun.
This was really fun.
Yeah.
I hope you guys all had fun too.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time for more magic.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.